Hello, listeners. A warm welcome to the Complete Life Show. I'm your host, Lisa Thomaides, and I'm so glad that you've tuned in. This show is all about finding peace and well-being through the mind-body-spirit continuum. My hope is we can all take away nuggets of information from all the wonderful people that I interview to help us lead our very best lives. I'd like to introduce you today to Christina Hamill. Christina works as a biodynamic craniosacral therapist, providing maternity care, lactation care, pediatric care, and parent coaching. After completing her training in biodynamic craniosacral therapy with the Body Intelligence and Mentorship with Richard Ferguson, it was a dream come true to open a private practice in the Cowichan Valley community. With a focus on maternity care, lactation support, infant care and pediatric care, additional specialized skill sets are integrated into her family practice, which she has been running since 2016. Previously, Christina was a Waldorf infant and toddler caregiver and a holistic doula. Welcome, Christina. I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here and to be invited.
Well, I'm very sensitive to what you're offering as a mum of three children. I have, it's close to my heart, let's put it that way, as a mum. But I'd like to just start talking about, well, the first question I'll ask you is, what inspired you to shift from running Waldorf Daycare to becoming a craniosacral therapist? And tell us exactly what craniosacral therapy is, because I think it's quite confusing for a lot of people. They're not entirely sure. So you can split that into two if you like, but perhaps you could tell us.
I'll do my best.
That's great.
Well, like you, as a mom, this work is close to me. Actually, because my daughter experienced a tobogganing injury and at the age of 5, and there wasn't a craniosacral therapist in the Cowichan Valley. We had to drive to Victoria to get her the care that she needed. And the person that took her on really encouraged me to look into the program that was being offered in Victoria through Body Intelligence, and I looked into it and I thought, I was ready for a transition. I felt like being a Waldorf caregiver was already a holistic wellness approach to caring for children. So I already felt I was on that path, and it didn't feel like too big of a shift, but it really felt important to bring this kind of care to parents and their children in my community.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So then tell us a little bit about what craniosacral work is.
Well, it's a challenging question. Even though I've been doing this for a long time now, it's easier to explain in a context. So when people ask me that, I usually ask them, what is troubling you or what is inspiring you to ask me that question. So, for example, if someone has had a head injury, I might say to them that craniosacral therapy will help with rebalancing the shock to their system. So first and foremost, it will help their nervous system to re-regulate so that all the other systems of the body that interface are able to function optimally. So it works both on an energetic level, but it also works on a physical level. And a lot of people assume that craniosacral therapy is simply touching the occiput, which is the bone at the back of your head, or the sacrum, which is at the base of the spine. But actually, in this work, we are touching the whole body, where it's looking and asking for support. And one of the examples I give is like if you were looking at a sheet of fabric that was all wrinkled, you can imagine those wrinkles as kind of like tension patterns, and that are not allowing the body to really be in its optimal stability, balance, and that includes the skeletal structure and the fascia and all the organs. So when there's tension patterns, we're just not at our best. And what happens with craniosacral is that it's like the steam that comes out of a iron, or like a steamer that you might find at the dry cleaners or something like that, where it really allows all these tension patterns to soften, to loosen, to dissolve, to fade out, and then we can live more comfortably in our body.
And tell me, how can you tell that somebody has creases? Like, is there a way of reading it through the biofeedback?
Well, yeah, it's pretty amazing. I'm not really sure how to explain how that happens. I think the training is really what just is so astounding. I think all my fellow students and I were just in complete awe of this ability to be able to listen in and to pick up where the tension patterns are located, and also just that the body is actually speaking in that it's showing where it wants to have the support first. So you could have, for example, an ankle injury, or let's say more likely a shoulder injury, but really the body is calling for me to touch in at the ankles first. So it's not totally straightforward in that you're not necessarily touching an injured area right away. The body might not be ready to receive in that sensitive spot immediately. It might need to first establish a sense of safety with the contact, and then it also has its own healing priorities. So it kind of creates this map. So when I'm touching in, I often I'm observing the person's posture. It's giving me all kinds of information. And then other times I'm closing my eyes, and it literally is like a constellation that's lighting up and showing me where the body really wants to have contact, and in what order it wants to be supported.
So you'd say that a part of this treatment is highly intuitive. To be a craniosacral therapist, although there's a roadmap with watching somebody's body language, 50% of it maybe is also this intuitive ability to read the energy, or as you just called it, a constellation by closing your eyes. Like, is that what it is?
Well, I can't say that it's that for every craniosacral therapist. I can just say that that's my experience. That's just
You
how
work.
it is for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So that's not incorporated in the training, is trusting. I mean, I just know with Reiki energy, let's say, I'm a Reiki master, that using a pendulum over somebody's body is an immediate check in to see the energetic frequency that's coming off of someone's body, to see where they're out of flow. And that gives the practitioner a really immediate guidance, other than the person saying, I have pain in my neck. You can go down to their sacrum and it's blocked, or their throat and it's blocked, and it usually shows with a pendulum. So that's where
I
I'm.
see.
Do you get that in the training, in the biofeedback?
No,
No.
no, it's more we have the guidance to go to key places that are usually full of information. And the first place we learn to make contact is at the feet, just to get a sense of the the tone of the nervous system, whether it's super activated or slightly dissociated, or fully dissociated. We also learn to come in at the sacrum. That's a very charged area that gives a lot of information. And then another wonderful place to sort of get, I'd say, almost like a internal and external landscape of the person that I'm working with is touching at the shoulders. So those are three places that are very useful for getting information. We also learn about looking at the face and the shape of the body when it's resting on the table.
Right.
Craniosacral work is rooted in embryology, so we're very interested in, how the body was forming in utero, and how, the birth experience has imprinted on the person's body. We can see that in the face. We can see that in how they position themselves on the table. So that also gives us a lot of information as a practitioner.
Amazing. So,
Hmm.
coming back to your speciality, which is pregnant mothers, what inspires a pregnant mum to come to you? What sort of issues would she be having where she might seek out a specialist like yourself?
Well, it can vary. It can be really straightforward. They're coming maybe later in the pregnancy for discomfort, such as inguinal pain, pain in the pelvic area, pain in the lower back. Maybe earlier in the pregnancy, they're experiencing edema, which is the swelling in the legs and ankles and feet. They might also be experiencing an increase in varicose veins. So circulatory issues might be going on. So that's more of a physical issue. I do have moms who come because they may have experienced a miscarriage and they're having trouble bonding with their baby. They're not as in a hurry to connect with the baby because they're worried about losing the baby again. So I support moms to bond prenatally. So as soon as they find out they've conceived, to start that parenting journey right away and not wait 3 months to connect with the
That is
baby.
that is a wonderful thing. I suffered a miscarriage myself, and I do remember the next time I got pregnant, it was, waiting for those first 3 months to pass. Well, it was very stressful, and it's a difficult thing not to carry, thinking you're going to perhaps miscarry again.
Yeah,
Um,
it's hard because it means that yeah, it's sort of that catch 22. Do you detach yourself so that you have maybe less emotion around a potential, additional loss, or do you take the chance and attach because that's going to support the infant to feel welcome, or I should say the prenate to feel welcome into the family from the get-go. So it's an emotional journey, and it's a hard one for a lot of people, and it's not just the mom, it's also for the dad. So I really like to support that. And sometimes it's not even that. It might be a mom who's just been working full time and maybe already has children, and she's so busy, and she's actually just realizing that she's not taking the time to connect with her baby. So I work a lot with prenatal bonding.
oh, that's lovely. Yeah, and it is an
Hmm.
issue, and also postnatal depression is a huge issue. I certainly
Yes.
remember that I had a little bit of it with my first daughter, and at the time it just wasn't something anyone even diagnosed. I mean, it's crazy, but now I think about it, and I was like, I totally had that for a little while, for sure. And
Yeah, and one way that's helpful is I do provide home visits for mothers postnatally, because the getting up and going is it's a stress for a lot of moms. They
it
just want
certainly
to be
is, yeah.
home, and they want to process their experience, and integrate everything that's going on, and manage all the changes that are happening. And to make it easier on them, I do home visits, and I do, let's say, I observe to see what is going on and how mom is actually coping.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a lot to support the mums for sure. Now, I'd like to just touch bases about doing cranial sacral on a newborn. Now, this is going to be a hot topic because, new mothers are very, very protective naturally by instinct of their babies, and it's very hard to even accept them being touched and poked around by anybody other than somebody that they're very comfortable with. So tell me a little bit about how craniosacral work can help with a newborn?
Well, it can it can help on so many levels. I actually suggest that all newborns have craniosacral therapy because the birth experience itself is huge. I mean, they've just spent all this time building their body, and then now they're having this experience of changing from an environment that is, this amniotic environment to coming out into the real world and everything changing so quickly. For In the pre and perinatal psychology world, we tend to recognize that for a lot of babies, it could feel like a life death experience. So, how do we support babies to arrive, to really land in their bodies? And touch is one of the best ways to do that. So, a lot of parents are aware about integrating or bringing in like baby massage, for instance, and that's a wonderful thing. The touch of a craniosacral therapist really speaks to, I would say, like the soul of the baby, the whole energetic field of the baby. It's really like it's a welcome like no other, and it's acknowledging the baby's experience. There's a big process with that. I interview the parents about their birth experience and what it was like, and then I get into the conversation of like, well, if it was like that for you, how do you imagine it was like for your baby? So we start trying to see things a little bit more from the baby perspective, or the baby's experience. And so there's a lot of, we use our imagination, and we use our empathy and really our hearts to reach the infant fully. And it's more than just checking in with, how's their alignment, and, you know, um, there's so many reasons. We want the baby's body to be in alignment. We don't want them to be uncomfortable when they arrive, because if they're still feeling stressed about their birth experience, so many other things can happen. They can have trouble with their digestive system. They could have reflux, they could have constipation. There's just all these things that can make a baby feel uncomfortable and not sleep well. So craniosacral work really helps babies to arrive in their body and be comfortable in their body outside of the amniotic fluid. And it's really this really deep, energetic welcome and acknowledgement of their experience.
Gosh, it sounds really wonderful. I mean, I'm luckily my babies, although I had quite traumatic births, I have to say, for all of them, they did sleep well and they were large and they ate well. So I had quite a lucky experience, but I do know of many, many parents who've had awfully difficult, challenging experiences with their babies. So it's wonderful that someone like you's out there to support that. And I know craniosacral work helps with breastfeeding. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's slightly separate. So you've talked about mum, you've talked about baby. Now there's the breastfeeding part, which is so charged and there's so much pressure on mums to provide breastfeeding for their babies and how long they should do it, and there's a lot there. So tell us about that.
Well, yeah, it really all links together. Like with the moms coming during pregnancy, a lot of them are in the mentality of preparing for birth. So I'm helping them at that stage, and then they've had their birth experience. They're starting to relate more to their baby's birth experience, pardon me, and possibly recognizing if there was trauma, if there was intervention, and how that may have affected their arrival. And then there can be impacts that affect breastfeeding, whether it's the positioning that the baby was in utero, or whether, the baby had some intervention take place during the birth process. So those are some things that can affect breastfeeding. But I think something that want to mention before I go more into, say, talking about that, is this act of the first latch, just once again, is what completes birth. And I think most people don't know that, but we are mammals, and that first latch is the gesture of claiming the mother. And human babies, they need that opportunity. They go through 9 instinctive stages after being born that are these like micro milestones, and most people don't know about that. We're all familiar with the milestones in the first year of a child's life, but most people don't actually know that the baby is programmed with these 9 instinctive behaviors that occur in that first hour of birth. But what happens more often than not is that they're interrupted. And every time we interrupt those 9 stages, we're affecting the success of that baby breastfeeding, because we're interfering with that baby latching on their own in the sequence that is supposed to support that act. So a lot of the time when I'm working with moms, one of the questions I ask is, did the baby get to have that experience? Did the baby get to crawl up and have their first latch unfacilitated? And that means no help from a nurse, no help from a midwife, but mom and baby are working this out together, and baby gets to have this amazing experience of claiming their mom and just really like boosting their confidence in their arrival, because here they have succeeded and their brain is registering that everything is good, everything is safe now, because they've reached that and they've completed that process. So a lot of people think birth is finished when the baby's body is finished being born, but it's actually not finished until the baby has had their first latch.
It seems very, well, as a mum, it's a very natural thing um, to do that. I didn't realize it's not a natural. I mean, it's as you give birth and they put that on your belly, and then, there's this immediate need to connect through the breast to comfort the baby, because food is the comfort, or whatever it is, that process initially. But
Well, they're often rushed. So I
yeah,
remember when I had my daughter, it was very kind of common practice to just get the baby to the breast immediately after being born.
yeah,
But if you can imagine, running a marathon and then having to do something immediately after, but really we're supposed to have a resting period. In craniosacral therapy, we talk about potency. And in order to refuel that potency, we need to rest. And that is the perfect example. A baby has done all this work of birthing their body with, of course, their mom's co-working. They're doing it together. Um, but they need a chance to rest, and
yeah,
so does the mother.
yeah,
And so when we're rushing the baby immediately to breastfeed, we're actually we're overriding those 9 instinctive stages. We're
right,
we're rushing to the 9th one, which is the latch, the self-latching. But we need those things to happen before, for that latch to succeed and be
right.
sustainable.
So
Not.
I remember them taking the baby. I mean, as soon as it was out, setting it on my belly, and then taking the baby and cleaning him up, or her, washing them, just wiping them down, checking all their faculties were in order. The pediatrician would check heart rate, do all those immediate things to make sure baby was healthy, then wrapping them, and then it was brought to me.
Mhm.
That's how I remember that. But this is a long time ago, and I know that things are very
Well,
different now.
sometimes that still happens, but really, I can just sort of paint the ideal picture, which is baby is born, placed skin to skin immediately on the mother's abdomen,
Yep.
and is permitted to rest, and then that resting will give the impulse of those instinctive stages to begin.
Right.
And then we let the baby go through those stages and complete with the latch. And then, if the room isn't, as ideally warm as it should be, you can place a blanket over the baby, but not between the mother and the baby, so that they remain skin to skin.
Right.
And then we don't bathe the mother, we don't bathe the baby, because then we're washing away all these scents, all these odors that are kind of primitive, that speak to the olfactory nerve. And what a lot of people don't know is that the scent around the mother's nipple is the same scent as the amniotic sac.
Right.
And if mom showers, then she's showering away that indicator that helps baby find the breast. And if baby is washed, then they're being a lot of the goodness from uh, from the oh gosh, I'm blanking on on the word.
Oh,
Sorry,
don't worry. I think we've got the gist of what you're saying. I totally get that.
Sorry.
I'm trying to imagine. I'm trying to imagine when I gave birth, wanting to get up and have a shower. It was the last thing on my mind, and I can't even imagine that. I was so traumatized by the whole thing, and the taking the afterbirth away, and you're just delighted that it's over, and that you're holding the sort of baby. I remember my son. I always say he smelled like a steak. He was covered in blood, like it was. I don't even remember letting them wash him, because I was just holding him in delight that he was alive and there. But I can so see the practice and hygiene. There's this massive thing about hygiene now that changes everything. It's absolutely fascinating stuff, and I'm really. It's wonderful. I'm educated, and I'm a mum, and I know that people listening are going to be super educated and just hearing how you operate and how you work. And it's certainly comforting for young mums to know that there are people like you out there who can help them prepare, because there's a lot of anxiety for young mums about having their baby being safe, breastfeeding. So somebody like yourself who's trained in all those modalities, it would be enormously comforting. Christina, I just want to ask you to share how people can reach you, and if you do online sessions with them, because that's really important at this point. I would like you to share your website or your telephone number, if you're willing, to for any mums out there or grandparents that are going to give this number, your name, to their daughters or grandchildren, to experience a different kind of childbirth and prenatal, postnatal care.
Okay, absolutely. But first, I will say I did remember the word. It's vernix.
Okay.
The coating that's on the baby when they're born.
Yes,
we don't want to wash that away. We don't want to wash that away.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I finished answering the question about breastfeeding, but we really want to make sure that baby isn't experiencing stress, because we have 12 groups of cranial nerves. We have a huge amount of craniofacial muscles, 20 groups of those. And we think that breastfeeding is just about nutrition, but it's also about facial development. And we really want babies to have that great start with seeding their gut biome with breast milk and developing a healthy immune system. And I really want to say the sooner that the parents come, the better, because a lot of moms come to me when they're in a crisis and they're ready to give up.
Right.
They're very close to giving up on breastfeeding, and it was something that they were so committed to. And so I really recommend that moms start preparing for breastfeeding during their pregnancy, and I support that in my clinic.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, if there are things that create problems with breastfeeding after the baby is born, then of course they can come to me, but the sooner the better. So
I just want to say on the show, I don't want to participate in any shaming of mothers who choose to bottle feed their babies, because I fully support that for a number of reasons. For women who can't or choose to bottle feed, many babies and adults have been raised very healthily with bottled milk. We're discussing a natural approach, and that's wonderful, but there's no shaming here for mums who are breastfeeding or choose to bottle feed their children. Just want to mention that, Christina, because there's so much shame around that, and that's the last thing I want to talk about, and I don't want that on this show.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. It's really important, and everyone is on their journey making their choices, and they know themselves the best.
Yeah.
And I have the same approach in my clinic. I'm here to support families, not to preach and tell them what I think is best, but to listen to what their needs are and do my best to support their choices and their journey.
That's
so
wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for saying that.
Yeah, no, I always like to just throw that in, because it's holistically, it's always a natural approach is great, but there's always situations and just choices too that people choose a different approach, and that's completely fair.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us how to reach you, please, Christina.
Yes, you can reach me. My phone number is 250-748-5551. And my website is Craniosacral.com. So Cowichan is COWICHAN, Craniosacral, CRANIOSACRAL.com.
Wonderful. And do you come to Salt Spring ever, or is it always online, or people have to come to you?
Oh, right. Yes, you asked that. Well, I do come to Salt Spring. What I try to do when I come to Salt Spring is I try to book 2 to 3 families in one day, and I do home visits.
Smart.
Yeah. I also have families from Salt Spring who come to my clinic. It depends. They sometimes are renting a home for a birth, so that they're closer to the hospital here in the Cowichan Valley. But yeah, there are all kinds of situations when I'm doing parent coaching. I can do those types of sessions online.
Great.
But when we're doing, the hands-on work, it's got to be either myself going to Salt Spring or a family coming to me in my clinic. So yeah,
Wonderful.
And I'm open to ideas. So, if it's a weekend and I come for a weekend and treat more families that need support, then that's also, that's been a suggestion made by someone I know who has an Airbnb there. So we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, and also you could do some workshops. I mean, I think off season, that's doing workshops, because I'm sure that there'd be lots of organisations here that would support an informational workshop for you to educate and inform.
Yes, that's a wonderful idea. I like that.
Yeah. Well, if you do, you can come and stay in my B&B. I'd love to have you, Christina.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so just so thank you for coming on the show, Christina. I really appreciate all of that information and everything that you're doing to support mums and babies, and following your passions. And I'm really happy for you that you found your flow in this work, and it's such important work. Anybody else who would like to contact me or speak to me about any of my guests or Christina this week can contact me at figsandhoney@me.com, or can reach me through my website, which is www.figsandhoney.com. And if you'd like to come on this show and share your information or your business, or talk to us about anything really that supports humanity, as this show is all about, in lifting, and so we can have all a wonderful experience of life in the best possible way, please do get in touch. And I really appreciate you tuning in today. Thank you so much, listeners. Have a lovely day.